That medal was probably fake anyway, my younger brother Brandon shouted across the grand ballroom of the Bellevue Estates, his voice reverberating off the gold-leafed ceilings like a pistol shot. She bought it off eBay to trick our late father into signing over his military pension. Look at her, standing there in a tailor-made uniform, playing the brave soldier while living off our family's hard work. Over 60 high-profile civic leaders, regional port authorities, and defense contractors turned instantly, their martini glasses freezing in midair. I stood motionless in the center of the marble floor, my arms pinned rigidly at my sides in my crisp Army service uniform. My right thumb quietly rubbed the cold, micro-engraved notch of a matte black military thumb drive stamped with the designation Alpha 77 inside my pocket. As Captain Elena Rostova, former operational logistics lead for Special Operations Command, my mind instinctively cataloged every exit, every recording camera, and every shifting facial expression in the room. Beside Brandon stood my stepmother, Evelyn, dripping in diamonds, her fingers clutching a leather-bound folder tied with silk. Directly behind them hung a giant vinyl banner displaying "Welcome Brandon Rostov, new executive president of Rostov Global Maritime." "Brandon, stop," I said, my voice dropping into the low, unyielding pitch I had used during high-threat intel debriefings in Eastern Europe. "You sent me an urgent dispatch at 1700 hours claiming Dad's estate trust required my physical biometric signature to release his final medical debt clearances. I used that text to force you into this hall." Evelyn sneered into the podium microphone, her voice dripping with poison as she adjusted her pearl necklace. "I wanted every municipal mayor and defense official in this state to see what an ungrateful, dishonest leech looks like. You spent 7 years hiding in overseas posts while Brandon worked 80 hours a week building your father's $30 million shipping empire. You didn't give a single dime of your military pay to help pay for your father's cancer care." Brandon grabbed the microphone, stepping to the edge of the stage with a practiced, sorrowful sigh designed to manipulate the crowd. "It's tragic, really," Brandon said, his voice echoing through the PA speakers with fake, practiced heartbreak. "My sister couldn't handle real corporate work. She forged Dad's signature on a power of attorney while he was heavily medicated, trying to steal his military disability funds to pay off her personal gambling debts in Europe. That Valor Medal on her chest? Pure theater." A cold chorus of murmurs erupted across the banquet floor. Prominent city council members shook their heads in utter disgust, casting icy glances at my medals. Evelyn smirked, holding up the ribbon-tied folder for the entire room to see. "She doesn't even hold an active government security clearance," Evelyn shouted, her voice mounting in theatrical outrage. "Security, escort this trespassing fraud off the premises before she ruins my son's inaugural announcement." 2 broad-shouldered private security guards immediately stepped out from the velvet curtains near the side doors, their heavy leather shoes thumping against the floor as they moved toward me. But before their hands could make contact with my uniform collar, a tall, iron-jawed man sitting alone at the head table slammed his brass-trimmed dress hat onto the linen table with a deafening thud and stood up. He wore an Army service uniform adorned with 3 silver stars on each shoulder. General Marcus Vance, Deputy Commander of United States Transportation Command. The entire ballroom fell dead silent. The security guards froze in place, their hands hovering in the air as they recognized the formidable figure rising before them. "Mrs. Rostov, before you order private guards to lay hands on an active-duty special operations officer, you might want to ask your son why his corporate cargo ships are currently anchored 5 miles outside federal waters, barred from entering a single North American port." Evelyn's cruel grin instantly collapsed into a pale, bewildered grimace. Brandon's fingers began to twitch against the microphone, a fine mist of sweat breaking out along his forehead. "General Vance?" Evelyn stuttered, her theatrical confidence evaporating. I, I think you are severely mistaken. This is a private corporate dinner for Rostov Global Maritime. Elena is simply a disgraced former officer living on government handouts. General Vance ignored her completely. He turned his eyes toward me, snapped his polished leather shoes together, and brought his right hand up to his forehead in a slow, flawless military salute. Captain Rostova, General Vance said loudly enough for every microphone in the room to pick up, Operation Iron Anchor has been greenlit by the Department of Justice and the Defense Criminal Investigative Service. The floor is yours, Captain. Brandon's face turned gray. Operation Iron Anchor? What is he talking about, Mom? Evelyn didn't answer. She stared at me as if she were looking at a ghost. I stepped forward, my dress shoes sounding like precise clockwork against the marble. I pulled the matte black thumb drive stamped Alpha 77 from my pocket and held it under the bright stage lights, the exact encrypted drive my late father, Colonel Victor Rostov, had secretly handed to me in a military hospital room 3 days before he passed away. 7 years ago, I said, my voice commanding every square inch of the ballroom, my father was diagnosed with late-stage organ failure. My stepmother, Evelyn, convinced the family that Rostov Global Maritime was bankrupt, that Dad's experimental medical treatments cost $50,000 a month, and that if I didn't assign my military power of attorney over to Brandon, Dad would be removed from his private medical facility. "She's lying!" Evelyn screamed, her fingernails digging into the wooden podium. "She suffers from severe combat-induced paranoia. She's making up stories to steal Brandon's company." "I signed that military power of attorney," I continued, ignoring her screeching as the crowd stood spellbound. "And for 84 consecutive months, $16,000 a month was automatically transferred from my active duty pay, my specialized combat hazard bonuses, and my military injury trust. I lived in a bare, unheated room off base, eating military field rations, wearing worn boots, believing every single dollar was keeping my father alive." "It was," Evelyn yelled, her voice cracking as sweat began to ruin her heavy makeup. "Then why," General Vance interjected, unrolling a stamped federal document onto the head table, "does the Department of Veterans Affairs audit record prove that Colonel Victor Rostov was transferred to a fully government-funded Veterans Medical Center in Washington 6 years ago, paid entirely by his official military pension benefits?" The room went so completely silent that you could hear the hum of the air conditioning vents high above. Evelyn's jaw dropped open. She tried to speak, but only a raspy gasp escaped her throat. "You lied to me for 7 long years, Evelyn," I said, my tone dropping into an icy, razor-sharp edge. "You told me Dad was kept in strict sterile isolation and couldn't take phone calls. You sent me fake monthly medical receipts forged with a doctor's signature just so you and Brandon could siphon over $1.3 million of my military combat pay to fund Brandon's luxury cars, offshore accounts, and designer suits." "Elena," Brandon stammered, stepping away from the podium and holding his hands up in panic. "Elena, listen to me. It wasn't my idea. Mom told me you were overseas in high-risk zones and would never check domestic VA records. She told me we needed the cash flow to keep the company's private credit lines open." "You cowardly snake!" Evelyn shrieked, turning around and violently slapping Brandon across the face with her leather folder, sending loose papers flying across the stage floor. "You were the one who asked for the funds to cover your failed cryptocurrency investments in Dubai. You told me to keep taking her deployment pay." "I took it because you promised me the company presidency," Brandon yelled back, shoving his mother back against the velvet backdrop as the 60 wealthy guests watched the family tear itself apart in public. Without taking my eyes off them, I walked over to the primary media console near the stage. I inserted the matte black thumb drive marked Alpha 77 into the digital port and typed in my 10-digit security clearance code. The giant vinyl banner behind them unhooked from its frame and dropped to the floor, revealing a massive high-definition projector screen. The display flashed once, then revealed a federal financial audit stream provided by the Department of Defense Inspector General, complete with glowing red government seals, decrypted wire transfers, and verified bank records. Source account: Captain E. Rostova, Combat Hazard, Disability Trust. Destination account: Brandon Rostov Offshore Holdings, Cayman Islands. Total fraudulent transfers: $1,344,000. Classified Naval Logistics Port Clearance number Alpha 77, registered exclusively to Captain Elena Rostova. You told these port authorities that Rostov Global Maritime was saved by Brandon's executive genius, I said, pointing at the glowing numbers. Brandon didn't secure the international shipping corridors that saved this business last spring. I authorized those transport routes through my military intelligence clearance, while I was recovering from a shrapnel wound in a military hospital. Brandon used the forged power of attorney to copy my digital credentials. No, that military clearance belongs to the Rostov family estate, Evelyn screamed, lunging toward the media terminal with her hands clawing the air. A military power of attorney executed under fraudulent medical pretenses constitutes federal wire fraud and treasonous impersonation of an officer, Mrs. Rostov, General Vance said with absolute finality. At that exact second, the heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom were slammed open. 8 armed federal marshals, accompanied by special agents from the Naval Criminal Investigative Service and the Defense Criminal Investigative Service, strode into the room, their boots ringing out in loud unison against the floor. The lead NCIS agent walked straight up the stage steps, coming to a halt right between my stepmother and my brother. Evelyn Rostov, Brandon Rostov, the agent announced, his voice carrying absolute authority. You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, multi-year military pension theft, corporate forgery, and unauthorized exploitation of classified military shipping credentials. Get your hands off me, Evelyn screamed as a female marshal pulled her arms behind her back, the sharp click-click of steel handcuffs ringing through the silent hall. Do you know who I am? I am Evelyn Rostov. I sit on the board of 3 national arts foundations. Your foundation appointments, the agent replied coldly, were revoked an hour ago following Captain Rostova's submission of sworn federal affidavits and decrypted bank records. Brandon offered no resistance whatsoever. He sank onto his knees on the stage, crying hysterically as steel cuffs were locked around his wrists over his tailored suit jacket. Evelyn screamed as her designer gown tore against the podium edge while she was marched down the steps, her social standing completely destroyed in front of the city's entire business elite. Elena, please stop them, Evelyn sobbed, her face twisted in ugly terror as she was marched past me toward the exit. We are your family. You can't let these federal agents lock your own family in prison. I stood tall, my chest out, my head held high, staring at my stepmother with cold, unwavering composure. You said my medal was fake, Evelyn, I said softly, my voice echoing across the ballroom. But the consequences you earned tonight are as real as it gets. As the marshals marched my stepmother and brother down the center aisle, past a crowd of stunned corporate leaders who were already pulling their investment contracts, General Vance walked over to my side. He didn't offer empty words or fake comfort. He simply turned, snapped his heels together, and rendered a final, quiet salute of absolute honor. Slowly, every military officer, city leader, and port authority official in the room stood up from their tables, breaking into a thunderous, overwhelming standing ovation that echoed through the high ceilings, honoring the true officer who had exposed the truth and reclaimed her dignity. I felt the heavy weight of the matte black drive in my hand, knowing that 7 years of sacrifice, deceit, and silence had finally ended in the undeniable peace of earned justice. You cannot fix manipulative family members by sacrificing your earnings, your sanity, or your self-respect. For 7 long years, I allowed my family to manipulate my sense of loyalty, believing that my quiet endurance was the ultimate proof of my duty to my father's memory. I allowed them to question my service, mock my sacrifices, and steal my hard-earned combat pay because I foolishly believed that keeping quiet was the only way to hold my family together. But greedy, toxic people do not view your silence as love. They view it as an opportunity to exploit you further. They will use your deepest loyalty as a weapon against you, fabricate lies to destroy your reputation, and attempt to strip away your dignity while playing the victim the second their actions are brought into the light. Real peace does not come from silently tolerating abuse to protect people who harm you. Real peace comes from standing firm in your integrity, stepping directly into the truth, and letting the natural consequences of their own choices dismantle their lies. Never destroy your own life to keep toxic people happy.